and welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel. My pronouns are he, him. I write about movies, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, and co-host of the It's the Pictures podcast.
And my name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast. I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
Salute.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So, movies. Hey, that's what we do here. And before we get to the three main movies we're talking about tonight, want to mention that we have a Patreon, and over on the Patreon, because it is October, we decided to watch a horror flick, and we watched Immaculate. The Sydney Sweeney is a nun who is maybe carrying the savior. And we watched that because we had watched The First Omen earlier this year, and we wanted to see another pregnancy horror, and It's a fun conversation, which is better than my description. So if you're a patron, check that out. And if you're not a patron, please consider becoming one. But on tonight's show, we are delving into two horror movies and one horror adjacent movie. We're talking about Smile 2, which is not the sequel to Smile. I was really surprised. I'm just kidding. It's the sequel to Smile. We're talking about
wait, what?
Yeah, we're talking about the French horror movie MadS. And we're talking about Anna Kendrick's directorial debut, Woman of the Hour. So we're going to start off with Smile 2. Evan and I did not see that, but Megan did. So Megan, please take it away.
All right. So Smile 2 is written and directed by Parker Finn, who also wrote and directed The First Smile, which is also based on his short film, Laura Hasn't Slept. And if you have seen the first one, or even if you haven't, a quick recap is basically that there are people who are smiling creepily, and they are possessed, infected. Actually, it's more like possession. But and they pass this on to people, and very similar to The Ring, within a week, you are hallucinating, and you're doing horrible things to yourself, and then you kill yourself, and you do it in front of another person in order to pass this along, which is also kind of like It Follows as well.
Yep.
So in the way the first one ends, the protagonist thinks she's in the clear, but she is not. And then she lights herself on fire in front of her ex-boyfriend, played by the great Kyle Gallner. And he witnesses this, unfortunately, to his demise.
Mm-hmm. So it's quite the ending, I have to say.
It's such a great ending. Yes.
If I recall correctly, you can see her burning body in the reflection of his eyes something like that.
Yeah. It's so good. It's such a great movie. It's creepy, it's eerie, it's very unsettling.
Even though it sounds derivative?
Surprise. Yeah, I don't think it's derivative. I think it's inspired by things. I think I think there's a difference there.
Sure, of course.
But I think it's very easy to call it derivative. Like if you just not that you saw it, so I know you're not.
No, I haven't seen it. I have wanted to see it and just haven't gotten around to it.
But no, I mean, I think it's doing enough unique things, or it's at least doing what it does well enough that I think you can see the influences, but I don't think it is just copying them. But it's interesting because you did mention Truth or Dare, the 2018 film, and I have not seen that, even though people are smiling creepy in that film too. Mm-hmm. So who knows? Maybe it is a ripoff of that, but I think it's doing enough unique and captivating things on its own. And plus I like Kyle Gallner. He's a good actor. So the film picks up a week later. And the way to avoid this curse that you learn in the first film is that if you kill someone brutally in front of a witness, you can escape the curse. It's like a way to jump out of it. Yeah.
How do you learn that? I mean,
I don't remember, but they learned that in the film. Don't ask me how. I don't remember.
Okay.
But they
Yeah,
do.
but did someone like accidentally kill someone from someone else?
I don't know.
I feel
I
like
don't
that's
remember.
how you learn something like that.
Yeah,
Unless you're
that's
just
true.
a sick fuck.
Yeah, it could be. That could be. I didn't rewatch the first one. I should have, but I ran out of time. But yes, but that is the thing, is that and they don't actually delve into that in the sequel. But knowing that does help, because the movie opens with Kyle Gallner, and he is waiting outside of a house, and it's a drug den. And he has a guy where he has his gun held to him behind him. And he's like, okay, don't make a sound. He's like, when you enter the house, don't alert anyone that I'm here. And so then he kills him in front of this other guy. But because of stray bullets, the other guy is dying too. And he's like, no, you can't die. You can't die. You have to watch. You have to be a witness. So that's the only reference to that they give in this one. But yeah, so then there's a surprise guy there played by Lucas Gage, and he witnesses this. And then there's a whole bunch of other guys who show up. So Kyle Gallner's like running through the house trying to get out, and he's running away as people are shooting at him. And then he gets hit by a truck, brutally. And you see the biggest blood streak. You see a severed leg. You see intestines on the ground. Like, it is
Whoa.
nuts. And it is in the shape, no surprise, of a weird, creepy smile. This was my first indication that I was like, oh, this film is going hard. This is not the first one. Because the first one is really tense and nerve-wracking, but and eerie, but it's not like super, super gory. And this movie ratchets up the fucking gore. It is nasty. It is gory. Jump scares galore. It feels like a different film in a way. So that happens, and that's like the first 5-10 minutes of the film. And the rest of the film, we jump ahead a year. And not a year. I take that back. It's not a year. It's not a year at all. I don't know why I said that. It's a year for the protagonist of this film, who is Riley. I can't even talk. What is her name? Sky Riley. Thank you. Played by Naomi Scott. And she is a world famous pop star, but for the past year, she's been in the hospital because she got into a severe car accident where her boyfriend was killed, who was a famous actor. And she had severe back injuries. And so she's been doing physical therapy and all that. And she was a drug addict and an alcoholic, and she went to rehab, and she's been sober for the past year. So she's now ready to make a comeback on her world tour. And her mom is Rosemary DeWitt, who's also her manager. And her mom's really pushing her to do this tour. And at first she's kind of yeah, okay. But then weird things start happening because she runs into Lucas Gage from the first scene of the film, and he's acting really weird, and he's high, and so she thinks it's just because he's high, but he starts talking about how he's hearing things and keeps seeing things, and then she's looking, and there's nothing there because she's at his house to get some Vicodin, or his apartment to get Vicodin for her back pain, even though she shouldn't have it. But nobody will prescribe anything to her because of that, because of her drug history. And so anyway, long story short, he starts smiling creepy at her and and then he starts bashing his face in with a weight that you would put on a bar, not a barbell, but
a scale?
No, not a scale, but the barbell.
A dumbbell? The little ones.
Yeah, but
dumbbells.
The big ones, the really big
plates.
Ones.
They're
Yeah, the plates.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So a weight plate, yes. And he starts bashing his face over and over. And every time you see it, and more of his face is bashed in and more of the blood, and you start to see his jaw hang off and fall off. It is disgusting.
Wow, they really are going for it.
They're going for it. So she's horrified, and she's going to call the police, but she can't because then people will know she's there and tie her to it. So anyway, she leaves. And then the movie proceeds with her basically thinking she's hallucinating, but she's not. It's the entity from the first film that has infected her and is making her see all these things. And so she calls up her best friend who she hasn't talked to, but then is her best friend really there? And then you come to find out the whole time, no, her best friend was not ever really there, never at her house. It was actually the entity posing as her friend. And then there's this guy who contacts her and he's like, hey, I know who you are. I know how to stop this. Everything you're seeing, it's real. Because she keeps seeing like dancers in her apartment and they're like dancing creepily while smiling and then stopping, like almost like a freeze frame. And then they're like pushing her and she gets a concussion. Like it's all this like crazy stuff. And she keeps seeing like fans smiling weirdly at her at fan events. And they're being creepy and she feels like she's being stalked, all of these things. And then this guy contacts her and he's like, I know what to do. We have to kill you and then bring you back. And I can do that because I'm an ER nurse. He's like, I can stop your heart and freeze you and then bring you back. So she is like, no, you're ridiculous and crazy. But then eventually, after seeing so many horrible things, like her mother kill herself by stabbing herself in the throat and in the eyeball, but then, oh, it wasn't her mother who did it. She did it. This movie's nuts. So then she goes to this guy's place in Staten Island and it's like this remote building and she's in this like meat locker at this old Pizza Hut apparently. And then, you know, of course the guy's like, oh, don't close the door because then you can't get out. And what happens, the door closes so she can't get out. And the whole time the entity is with her and it's like a doppelganger of herself when she had the car accident from a year earlier. And it's basically infecting her. And then to me, it was an inevitable ending. This is the only way the film can end. I had this ending pegged before I even started watching this film. I'm like, oh, she's going to go on stage in front of millions of people and perform with her creepy smile face and essentially infect millions of people. And that's what happens. She goes on stage. She has the weird, creepy smile. Her mother is still alive and is in the audience. And then you see the audience's reaction and you hear weird sounds, like pounding sounds. And then it cuts to her and she's dead on the floor with her microphone jammed in her eye and she has bashed herself to death. And that's how the movie ends.
Oh, alrighty then.
Yeah. So it is such a gory movie. Like I said, it feels like a different movie, but it does fit in that world of the first one, but tonally it's very different, much more extreme. I liked some of the things it was doing, exploring addiction and depression, because some of the ways, like the way she was feeling so horrible about herself, like some of that seemed to be reflected in the visuals of what she was hallucinating. And I thought that was a fascinating way to explore addiction. And I thought this was good. I just didn't like it nearly as much as the first one. For me, even though it was, you know, ratcheting up the intensity of it and the gore, I kind of liked the quiet nature, the sinister eeriness of the first one more. Yeah, but I will say that inevitable ending, like I said, I heard people coming out of the theater and they were like, holy shit, that ending was crazy. And I guess it kind of was, but to me, I'm just like, no, that's just the way it had to happen. There's no other way it could go. But I didn't feel like, oh God, this is boring. I predicted it. It just felt more like kind of the inevitability of a car crash. Like, oh, here it comes.
I'm going to break in here real quick.
Of course, please.
Would you like to know how Truth or Dare ends?
Oh God, does it end the same way?
The two people who have survived to get rid of the curse do a YouTube live video.
Shut up.
That hundreds of thousands of people watch.
Get the fuck out. Okay, wow.
So I guess maybe
maybe it is more derivative than than I thought.
Who can say?
Yeah.
But I still want to see the
Yeah.
first one.
The first one
Yeah.
is great. And this is from what I have heard, people are loving the second one too. I just didn't like it as much. I'm also not the biggest fan of Naomi Scott. Like, I think she does a good job here. Like, she really is. It seems like she's giving it her all as far as someone whose like mind and world are unraveling. I don't know. There's something about her performance though that just for some reason did not feel authentic to me. I don't know. I have to analyze it more. I have to sit with it more. But yeah. But I mean, this is a good movie. Like, this is a solid movie. I just liked the first one better.
Okay.
But
Fair
yeah,
enough.
it is very gross. Very gross.
Sounds like it.
Sounds like it is.
And I didn't even get into all of the grossness of this. Like, there's a lot of scenes of her like pulling her hair out
Oh,
from
God.
anxiety. And yeah, and there's like broken bones and like things jutting out from her car accident. Yeah, it's very gross.
Yee.
Well, then I think unless you have something else to say, Megan, this is the perfect time to segue into MadS, which has
Yeah.
a lot of bone cracking in it.
Sure does.
MadS. Let me read you ye old IMDb summary. A teenager who stops off to see his dealer to test a new drug before heading off for a night of partying. That's not a sentence. There's a period at the end of that. On the way home, he picks up an injured woman. That's not really what happens either. And the night takes a surreal turn.
Yeah, I was gonna say she jumps in his car. I wouldn't say
Right.
he picks her up, but that's after he is idiotically put a lit cigarette falls into his lap or something like that. So he has
Yeah.
to like pull the car over.
And he's like, Sacre bleu, because it's a French movie.
Right.
And
he's like, merde, 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 merde.
where are my oofs? Okay. So basically what happens, that is what happens is he's with his dealer, he buys some drugs, he's driving home in a vintage Ford Mustang in the
Yeah.
French countryside.
Like, look at this fancy pants driving a Mustang. And then, of course, it's his dad's car. Like,
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense.
And this woman jumps into his car and she's trying to tell him that, you know, something horrible has happened to her. And if you've ever driven anywhere where there is a prison or a state hospital, let's call it, there are all these signs on the road that say, do not pick up hitchhikers. So
That
apparently
is
they don't,
true.
apparently they don't have that in France.
He's not really given much of a choice. She
does jump in.
yeah.
Yeah.
very creepily like hops onto his car and then jumps into the passenger seat and is trying to get him to drive. She's like turning the key in the ignition and like playing this audio recorder of like the weird experiments that were done to her.
Yeah. And he's like, Sacre bleu, I will drive you somewhere. And he doesn't say that.
No.
And she goes through the glove box looking for something, and she finds I don't know what exactly she finds. I don't know if I ever saw it, but it's a stabby kind of thing. And she starts stabbing herself in the chest, and then she's like, it looks like she's dying, and then it looks like she bites him in the neck, but she doesn't because there's no bite wound there. Later you find out, and he goes home to his dad's house, and he's freaking out. And he goes and he runs and he takes a shower, and then his girlfriend calls and she's like, where have you been? Sacre bleu. This is a recurring theme.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, this is the movie. It in addition to being what it is, the gag is also that it is one take.
Mhm.
It's a one single camera take. And I don't know if it actually is or if it's hidden. If it really is, this is the most choreographed movie of all time.
That
That's
would be
what the
impressive.
director said. He said it was one take in his director statement.
Huh.
I mean,
I don't know if it is. But
I would
that's
have
what
a
he
hard
said.
time. I would have a hard time saying where are the cuts, but at the same time, there are some places that I'm thinking about it, and I was like, that'd be a pretty good place to put a cut.
Yeah.
You know, so I think maybe it's one cut in the sense that the Birdman thing with Michael Keaton is one cut, you know, or one long take. Anyway, he thinks he's going to stay home. He goes back to, the girlfriend calls. She's like, where are you? And then he goes and looks for the woman who jumped in his car, and she's gone. but he doesn't look for her in his house because why would you? And the girlfriend convinces him to go to a party, even though he's going to stay home originally. And they go to a party, and then he starts to freak out, and he's doing that thing that happens in zombie movies where you go like, hey, and your head like twitches like that.
Yeah, there's cricking and creaking and cracking.
There are so many
glowing in the dark,
creaking, cracking bone noises in this movie. It drove me fucking nuts.
Am I a weirdo that I found it very soothing and I kind of loved it, especially
Are you sure you don't like ASMR? I mean,
I know, right? Especially when it happened to Anna and Ais, I was like, when she kept making those like clicky noises, I was like, oh, I'm really digging this. It's so relaxing.
Yeah.
I might have a problem.
Yeah. So anyway, the girlfriend is Anais, or Anna, they sometimes call her, and then her friend is Julia. It turns out Roman is sleeping with both of them, and
dirty jerk.
Yeah, I know.
Even
though Anna's like, oh, hey, good for you, because Anna also answers a phone call where she's like, she says something. It sounds like she's got a second boyfriend too, because she has this phone call at one point where she's like, yeah, don't worry, I'm gonna get the stuff from him and I'll see you later. You can kiss you, bisous, or whatever the fuck she says.
No, it does sound like she has another boyfriend.
It does, yeah. But we never find that out because Roman leaves the party because the alarm goes off at his dad's house and he has to rush over there and turn the alarm off before the cops come. But it turns out the crazy woman is there and she's in his shower trying to like wash all the blood off herself and maybe still stabbing herself. I can't remember. And then
then some that way.
Yeah. Then some guys in Devo suits and helmets show up with guns.
Yeah. Commandos with the crazy. I don't even know if they're like night vision goggles or something, and heavy artillery.
Yeah. And like gas
waltz
masks.
in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like emptying clips of bullets into her, and that doesn't seem to be killing her.
Yeah, so they take her and then Roman's like, sacre bleu, and he leaves and like starts running into the street and stuff like that. And then the last thing you see of Roman is like he gets abducted by the secret police or whatever they are and dragged into a van, and it's like, oh, we're switching narrators or first person characters, and then the movie becomes Anna's movie. And it follows her around, and she's been infected because she was what was she? Was she making out with Roma at some point?
She was making out with him. Yeah.
And although it seems like you don't even need to do that, it seems like you just need to be near someone. It's highly communicable. It seems.
Right. Yeah.
And so this is the section I like the most, is the Anna section where she's like, she runs into a bar and she's like, you gotta lock the door, give me the fucking keys.
Yeah.
Give me the fucking keys, sacre bleu. And so she locks the door and then she goes into the bathroom and she's been shot like a half dozen times and she's got these exit wounds in her stomach and she's bleeding and she's like, oh my God, sacre bleu, the blood. And
no, but I love what she says. She's like, my poor body, which is such a fascinating thing to say. And I don't feel like you hear that in enough like outbreak zombie body horror movies. And I kind of love that she makes that comment.
That did stand out to me. And then, she takes off running and she finds Julia, who is the other woman who had been sleeping with Roma. And, but this is after Anna has like knocked a guy into the river and stolen his
bike,
stolen his scooter, and like is zipping around. And then she meets up with Julia, and Julia like gets her on the scooter, and she's like, "Let's go!" And she starts like wiping her blood in Julia's mouth, and Julia's like, "Oh, what are you doing, sucker
eyes?" Yeah.
And I don't remember how Anna. We never really see buy it, do we? Until the very end.
Well, they gets kind of separated, like, because Julie is like taking off, and Anna's
she's going to get
after
to her mother's house. Yeah,
right. And then she runs to the elevator, and Anna like barely misses getting to the elevator. Right. But then when she goes up to find her mom, Anna's like already like eating her mom's corpse or something. I don't even know.
Yeah. And then Julia like starts running up the stairs to the top floor, and Anna's like, "Come on, Julia, it's gonna be okay. I'm just gonna bite your face off."
I love that.
I was just like, wow, that's quite a thing there. And then Julia gets up to the top floor and she finds one, Devo suit person, who's like, stay away from me. This is bad, but I can help you. This is really what they sound like. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God.
And they have these weird voice modulators, all of them in the suits. They sound like I don't know how it's like this kind of guttural, like stay away from me kind of thing.
Right.
Mhm.
It's not like Bane, thankfully.
Right. Stay away from me, Batman.
Stay away from me.
Why does Bane sound like Jimmy Stewart?
Oh no, Mr.
I don't
Bond.
know,
I
ask Tom
expect you to die. So anyway, Anna comes into the top floor and starts biting the armed person's ankles like she's a rabid dog. And the armed person shoots her like 1 billion times and does kill Anna. But then she gives Julia her gun and is like, you got to get out of here. Stay out of the light because like they're attracted to light, and don't let anybody bite you. Like, no shit. And now turn around because I'm going to blow my own fucking head off, which she does. And then Julia collapses to the floor and starts like giggling maniacally, which is one of the things that happens to people. And it's like, oh, Julia's been infected. Well, no shit. She's got Anna's blood all over her fucking face.
Right.
And then you see like a huge explosion as if the French government has like bombed part of the city. But basically you get the impression that this highly communicable disease is going to end the world if they don't contain it. And it seems like they're having a very difficult time containing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Although one of the other things that I thought was kind of an like this is the premise that I remember reading on the press release, but also it's something that Julia keeps saying. She kept saying like, wake up to herself.
Yes.
Like, she's like, this is a nightmare. And she kept saying like, is this a bad trip? And
it's the last thing she says. That's right.
Yeah. Which I think is just, it is kind of interesting. Like, is it the end of the world or is it a bad trip? Like, yeah.
Well, that's interesting because are they all three having the same bad trip?
Shared, yeah. Delusion.
I mean, I know psychedelics are different for everybody, but I've never heard of the same 3 people,
right?
Taking the same 5 dry grams and having,
yeah. That's why I don't think it is a hallucination. I think it is the end of the world.
Yeah.
But that would have been a bold choice to just have all that chaos and then just have one of them like come to like, the fuck, covered in blood or something. Whoa, what the hell happened?
I don't know. You just started talking about someone eating your face and you were holding this rifle. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's too much like, oh, is it just a dream? Like, I would be so pissed.
Yeah, that would have been annoying.
Well, what did everybody think of MadS? Evan, what did you think of MadS?
I was MadS about Saffron. No, I actually really liked this. I really dug its very like frenetic, fast-paced thing that it had going on. It just felt like it moved from location to location. I liked that it shifted perspectives off of Roman after he got kidnapped by the secret police, as you call them. And this is gross and just I really dug it. I was all about it. Just like how fast paced, frenetic. I was just on the edge of my seat. It felt really unnerved by the whole thing, and I really dig the way it's shot like a found footage movie, even though it's not a found footage movie.
Mm-hmm.
That was really working for me. So
that's so funny that you say that because it reminded me so much of Wreck.
Yes,
in a way it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although Wreck is a whole lot better. Oh, I said it.
It's definitely scarier. Wreck.
Wreck is more intense. It's more quickly paced. Like, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we have one opinion. Let's get into the second opinion, Megan.
I liked this too. I thought this was great. I think it starts off very slowly. I kind of found myself losing focus and interest at first. And maybe it's just because I don't give a shit about people doing drugs. I don't give a shit about an 18-year-old privileged kid, looking to score and going to a party. But I was like, I'm like, where is this going? What is happening? So I was intrigued enough, but I was kind of like, oh, what's going on? But then then when Romaine gets abducted, from that point, I was hooked. I was like, what the fuck? What is going on? And even a little bit before, like when the Devo suit people come in and they start just like blowing, like just shooting guns and trying to blow that woman away and she's not dying. Like, yeah, I love a zombie film. I love an infection outbreak film. I think this does some unique things. Like, even though it feels like Wreck, it also feels a little bit like the French zombie film Night Eats the World, which I love that film. I think it's great. So yeah, but it's doing something interesting here and it's unique. And I like the one, whether it actually is a one shot, like a one take, or just looks like it and feels like it. I think it's effective. I like how we switch protagonists. I like that we get the different perspectives of what's happening. I like how this kind of seems to affect people differently, where like Anna, it's like it makes her really unhinged in like a giggly, murderous way, which doesn't seem to always happen to people or as fervently or as quickly. But yeah, I really liked this too. I liked the cinematography. I liked the performances. I loved the sound design. I really liked this.
Yeah, and what you were saying too about the sentience of the people that are infected too, I thought was quite interesting because you don't normally get that. Like usually in a zombie movie, it's like people's bodies might be decaying and they're losing their cognizance, but it seems like in this they hold on to it for a very long time, so they're really like grappling with losing their mind and losing control of their body. And like you said, when she was like, oh, my poor body.
I know. And then with that guy, when she steals his scooter and she pushes him over and she's like giggling, riding away. But then she's like, I'm so sorry. It's not me.
Yeah, that's right. People keep saying that. Like, it's not me. I'm so sorry. I'm not in control of my body.
As they do weird things and seem to be delighted in it.
Yeah, I think there's something really interesting about that people are in their body but not in control of it, and how they could do these really messed up things and still feel bad about it in the moment, but still laughing maniacally and doing it anyway.
I know. It makes it even sadder, but also funnier.
Interesting.
What did you think, Dave?
Didn't like it.
Really?
Not really. No.
I'm stunned.
Part of it comes from the whole young money drugs party thing.
See, okay,
like I get
that.
I just didn't like any of these people because they're all fucking shitty. And the only thing you know about them is that they're shitty. That's the only thing you know about them. And I don't think that people who do a lot of drugs are inherently shitty, as someone who has, done a few dances around the block. I think Romain is the wrong character to try to make me feel sympathy for, because he's stupid.
I agree.
I mean, he's so fucking dumb. He leaves that woman in his car and goes into, like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I know you're tripping balls, man, but stop being fucking stupid. Just like drink a glass of milk, do some fucking thing.
Drink a glass of milk.
Just like relax.
That'll solve all his problems.
And then he clearly knows that something is wrong with him, but he goes to this party anyway, and then he starts trying to bite Julia. And the thing about Romain is that he seems to have no ambivalence about what's happening to him. He's just like, it is interesting that you say Anais is just like, oh, I'm sorry for pushing you into the river, dude, sacre bleu. And but Romain is just kind of like, shit's happening.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm just sorry. I'm this rich kid living in the burbs. Me.
Yeah. He seems to really like the power that comes from it too. The feelings of rage and strength, and
which I think is a smart decision to have three very distinct distinct reactions to what's happening there. Romain is just like, I'm a badass, boo, give me an Uzi or whatever the fuck. And then Anais is kind of caught up between like, oh, this is making me feel like, ooh, but at the same time, my poor body, and I didn't mean to push you in the river. And then you have Julia, who's just like fucking freaked out. Just really, really like, what the fuck? But I spent a lot of time watching this, waiting for the action to catch up to where the camera was. And that really bummed me out. So I feel like there are a lot of shots where you're just sitting somewhere, like so they can get everything in position that's happening off screen, so that then they can open the elevator door, or they can open up the taxi door, or they can, take enough time for, Ramon to get into the house and, find the woman in the shower and things like that. And if this movie does have invisible cuts, then that's a real bummer. And if it has none, I mean, it's a nice try. And it is pretty impressive if this really is one take. But I just didn't find myself interested enough in the characters and their plight. And I don't really mind that I don't know what's going on with the... you all know how I feel that I like my horror movies to be explained less. And this movie definitely has that. But at the same time, the way that the gendarme at the end kind of explains to Julia what she needs to do, it's like, all right, well, you just kind of gave everything away to me, which is kind of a bummer. And I don't know. I just... It's interesting. I don't really know the performer who plays Anais. I do know Lucille Guillaume, who is fine as Julia. Quite good, actually. But the second performer, I was just like, her story is just so like wacky. The way that she's like running around and, like you said, my poor body, and how, when she's in the bathroom, she hears a bunch of gunshots and she opens the bathroom door and everyone's getting blown away in the bar. I was like, holy shit. And so she jumps out the window, and when she lands on her ass, she thinks it's hilarious, which is also kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of dug her energy, what she brought to it, because in the Roman section, she's just kind of shitty. And then all of a sudden, she's a very different person in the second bit, where she's just like, she's over here, she's over there, she's selling hats and t-shirts, she's just, whatever. And that I liked. I think that this just had more things I didn't like than things I did like. I did not like the frenetic camera work. It drove me nuts. I want somebody to do one of these movies, but all on a body cam or a steady cam. Just so I can have the smoothness. And I don't get motion sickness at movies like some people do, like when they're watching a Paul Greengrass movie. But it just, I don't know. I think it all begins with, I hated Roman and I didn't care if he lived or died. And I don't think I ever quite got past that.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. That's why I had a hard time at the beginning of this. But yeah, but once he's gone, I'm like, woo, this is a better movie.
I will say his abduction was, I was kind of thinking that I didn't know where they were going to go, but I was like, we can't follow him this entire movie because he's kind of at the end of his rope right now. And then when he gets abducted off the street, like really fast, I was like, oh, well done, French movie. But yeah, it just kind of worked in fits and starts for me. I think the whole thing in the building at the end is really just not good.
Oh, see, I like that. Oh, well.
Well, I thought the only time that I really, really felt things were tense was in the section when Julia pushes Anna off the bike until she gets into the elevator and closes the door on Anna, which, by the way, Anna must be running fast as fuck. Because
yeah, well, they say that in one of like the reports or something that you hear about how they have extra strength, they're faster. Yeah. So it's not so it's, I guess it would,
and she's like
based
running,
on that, it's not a surprise.
And she's like shouting at her down the street, taunting her. And I really thought all that was great. But then when she's in the building, it reminded me of, this is so bizarre. It reminded me of the end of Silence of the Lambs. When Jodie
I don't think
Foster,
that's that bizarre. That makes sense.
When Jodie Foster is like, can't see anything. And Buffalo Bill is watching her with the night vision goggles. And I was just like, okay. And it's not really the same. It just,
it has that vibe though.
Yeah. The way that she's kind of like going up the stairs in the building, and the building is unfinished, I should mention. So the higher she goes, the more construction there is, and there's like construction shit around. And then she's kind of like walking into corners and she can't see where she is. And it's like, all right, So I'm sorry, everyone. I liked Night Eats the World a whole lot better than I liked this. Not that we're comparing.
Night Eats the World's great.
Night Eats the World is fucking crazy. And also Sacre Bleu. So,
I mean, also excellent actors, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you both liked it. Did you have more things to say? I bet you did. No? Maybe not.
No. I mean, probably could talk more, but that's okay.
I guessed wrong. So I think didn't mean to rain on your parade, but sometimes it rains. Sometimes it's just 40% chance of rain and then it rains.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm just bummed for you. You didn't like it, but oh well.
Yeah, I was a little bummed out too, because at first you two were like, "Let's watch MadS," and I was like, "Eh." And then I read about it. I was like, "Oh, this could be cool." And then I didn't think it was cool. So, oh well. Moving on. Our last movie of the night is Woman of the Hour. This is Anna Kendrick's directorial debut. And as with all things, let me pull up the IMDb summary. Cheryl Bradshaw, a woman looking for a suitor on a hit 1970s TV show, chooses charming bachelor Rodney Alcala, unaware that behind the man's gentle facade, or facade, he hides a deadly secret. Sorry.
She's not really looking for a suitor. She's on the show, but she's not looking
right, because her casting agent, her agent tells her, "Hey, they're
hey,
got
you should do this. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll get you lots of exposure," which they repeat several times. Cheryl says that.
Yes.
So who wrote this? Which marketing person wrote this? Damn you. So anyway, this was directed by Anna Kendrick. It's written by Ian McDonald. It stars Anna Kendrick and Daniel Zavato as Rodney. By the way, so I don't know if you know anything about this or not. This is a real serial killer, Rodney Alcala. He's played by Daniel Zavato. I would say very well played by Daniel Zavato. And Cheryl Bradshaw is a real woman who did appear on The Dating Game and pick him. He was bachelor number 3. And we see several of the murders he definitely committed in this. And one that he was, that they know he did, but he was let go in a technicality, the Wyoming murder. And then the way that his final victim escapes, not final victim in the movie, I should say, escapes. That happened in real life too. Some of these I already knew about. Some I had to look up because I went through a whole period where I researched serial killers from California in the 70s.
All right.
So if you have any Night Stalker questions,
I was going to say it was a swinging Saturday night for Dave.
Yeah. So, I just went down like a serial killer rabbit hole for a while there. Because you remember how many serial killer movies there were in like the early mid 90s? So like Copycat and Silence of the Lambs. And now, of course, I can't think of any.
No, but there's a ton. I mean, true crime is huge just in general. So yeah, that's not a surprise. But yes, there were a ton of serial killer movies then. You're absolutely right.
So this movie kind of follows Cheryl's journey from a bad audition to where her agent says, "Oh, I booked you on The Dating Game." And she's like, fuck me. But she goes on it when her agent's like, you get good exposure. You do this, you do that. Maybe you go on a date and whatever. And so Cheryl goes on The Dating Game. Rodney is the third contestant. The other 2 guys, one's a dum-dum, one's a douchebag. And then there's Rodney, who is answering all the questions correctly. And after the first round of questions, one of the makeup people says to Cheryl, he's like, why don't you, like spice up the questions and make it a little more interesting. Like, who fucking cares? You're never going to be on this show again. And she's like, yeah, you're right. So that's when the questions get more interesting and when Rodney like gets the upper hand. Meanwhile, I forgot to mention the woman in the audience seeing the show with her boyfriend and her boyfriend's parents. She recognizes Rodney Alcala from like a beach party she went to a year or 2 earlier. And one of her friends left with Rodney and ended up dead the next morning. And this friend, Laura is her name, found her. and she tries to report it to the producers in the show, but the security guard plays a prank on her, which is really cruel. And basically sets her up to meet the janitor or custodian. And then you see Cheryl and Rodney go out for a drink. And all the while, this is interspersed with several of Rodney's heinous fucking crimes. The movie opens up with him killing the woman in Montana. And then it shows him killing this woman in New York who was moving into an apartment that wasn't even linked to him for decades, I don't think. And then finally, the last murder or attempted murder you see is he's convinced this 15-year-old runaway or 16, she's underage, runaway to go with him to the middle of nowhere and do some photos. And he like grabs her and pushes her off a rock and assaults her. And she wakes up and she, this happened in real life. She acts like, hey, this was a consensual thing we did, but it was so crazy. I'll be embarrassed if people know about it. So please, let's just keep this between us. And he's like, okay, let's go back to town. And they stop to get gas. And he says, I got to pee. He actually says, I'm going to go take a leak. Gross. And she fucking hightails it the fuck out of there. It's like, this is kind of like Roma. It's just like you left the woman sitting in your car. Like, what the fuck, dude? It's also a convertible.
God he did.
Yeah,
of course.
Thank God.
I mean, that's the thing about it. It seems as if Rodney's pretty smart, but that's a really dumb thing to do. But he did that in real life too. So, and also, I have to say, having read a little bit about serial killers of the 70s, Son of Sam. God, fucking Summer of Sam is another movie. Sorry.
Yep.
With the misogyny and a lackadaisical sleuthing by police and the fact that people just seem to fucking disappear in the 60s and 70s all the time, nothing was ever done about this fucking creep for the longest time. And while he was arrested for this crime, his mother paid his bail and he was out in bail, and then he went and killed some more people. I mean, crazy.
A woman and a kid.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I had mentioned off mic how Margaret Qualley was going to come up in this. When Amy wakes up after she's been essayed and she's tied up, I'm like, why is Margaret Qualley in this movie all of a sudden? Because the way she's lying there with her hair back and everything like that, she looked like a different person to me. And I was like, is this another victim that we're just seeing? But no, it was Amy, and it was just an angle that made me think it looked like Margaret Qualley instead of Autumn Best. So, everybody. Oh, I should mention that Cheryl goes out with Rodney for a drink and he creeps her the fuck out, and a kindly server at this bar where they are basically saves her ass. And because Rodney's like, let's get another round. And he flags down a server and she looks at Cheryl and Cheryl shakes her head no. Cheryl's Anna Kendrick. And it's like, okay. And they leave and he tries to assault her in the parking lot, but it's back where the dating game was shot. So it's a big production lot and there's people in the production lot, and she gets away and then she leaves California because she's like, this is fucking the worst. And that's, it mentions, it does the thing where it says, Rodney McCall did all these things and he died in prison, and I don't know. So what everybody think? Megan, why don't you start us off on this one?
I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it. I liked Anna Kendrick's performance. I liked her direction. I like the choice to intersperse what's happening with the with various victims. I think it's a smart choice to focus on them as well, not just on what's happening in the present. I'm reading the press notes. There was an interview with Anna Kendrick, and she said that she and the screenwriter both wanted to focus on these women because so often true crime stories don't focus on the victims. They often focus on these salacious details and they focus on the killer. And that's, kind of, it's seen as exciting or, shocking and whatever, but so often victims get left out of it. And so to focus on them and to hint at their lives that were going on and how he stopped their lives. And I think you could have done that also while not showing him, assaulting them would have also worked. But I don't want to say it's a minor quibble because I don't think it is. But having said that, I'm still thrilled and delighted that the women who were victims were still, and girl, because one of them is not a woman, she's a girl, having them in that film along with Cheryl's story, I think is really powerful. Having the woman whose friend was killed, who's in the audience watching, I think that's powerful. Like that scene when she goes to the police after she's had that prank played on her, that viciously cruel prank. And she's going to the police and they're like, well, sorry, there's nothing we can do. We don't know who you're talking about. And she's like, but he was on national television. She's like, I'm giving you his information. And she's like, she leaves and she's like, do your fucking job. And she's screaming in the hallway. And it's just so heartbreaking because no one will take her seriously. No one will listen to her.
Including her boyfriend.
Yeah, he's a fucking scumbag too. And the fact that she's a Black woman, like it's not really addressed, but the fact that not only do women in this film have to quote play nice, but then on the extra layer of the fact that she's not a white woman, like it's just, I think there's a lot going on here, and I think it's incredibly smart, the little touches, because at first when I was watching the scene between Cheryl and Rodney, I had looked away for a couple of moments and I was like, wait a minute, what was the tip-off that made her creeped out? There had to have been a tip-off. There's always a tip-off.
Because to me, the whole thing was creepy.
The whole thing was creepy, yes. But but she didn't seem as creeped out in her interaction until when I was listening to it, I was like, something changed, something shifted. And then watching it, I was like, oh, this is what happened. And it was the fact that he was like extremely condescending in her answers and talking about, well, you need to be yourself and like just the way he was looking at her was really fucking creepy, creepier than it already had been. And then when, the server comes over and she shakes her head and it's like, because that is such a thing. Being a woman, it is so often, that like, when you go to a bar, sometimes you go to a bathroom and there'll be numbers like, hey, if you ask for this drink, a bartender will walk you out, or a bartender will say like something to help you. And women do it for each other too, because it's such a fucked up, dangerous, gross world that men are so fucking predatory. And I love what this film does where, yes, it's focusing on Rodney, but we don't just see Rodney be a dick. We see Tony Hales, the host, be a fucking misogynist creep.
Yep.
Yeah, he's
we
awful.
see Pete Holmes being a fucking gross creep to her too.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're seeing different iterations of misogyny and different levels of it. And like the second Bachelor, like, yeah, he's gross and talking about her giving him a blowjob and this and that. Like, he is gross. Do not mistake me. But he also warns her too. He's like, be careful with that asshole, as he's like hugging her and, meeting her for the first time. And like, so it's like, okay, he's gross, but he's not gross, which is so absurd.
Yeah,
there's like levels of gross.
He's gross level 1.
Yes, not gross level 10. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this film does such a great job in showcasing the different levels of sexism and misogyny that women have to navigate, and how there was something I read in the press notes too about being polite. And that is such a thing. It's so often that women have to be polite to a dude in public because you don't know how unhinged they are and how they're going to fucking react. Like, they could beat you. They could murder you. They could, they could strangle you. Like, you just don't fucking know. And that is such a scary place to be in. And so I think this film really nails that atmosphere extremely, extremely well. So I found this really captivating. I liked the performances. I liked the writing. I liked her rapid fire questions of the men when she finally starts kind of relaxing and being herself. It was kind of a nice reprieve to all of the like gross abuse that was happening in this film. So yeah, I liked it.
Evan.
I really like this too. I mean, I would echo a lot of what you said, Megan. I think I like that this movie focuses on the women who are the victims of this killer. I I agree with you that I feel like you could debate whether you even need to show the assault at all. I don't know that you do, but I do appreciate that when they show it, it's not usually up close. It's usually
Right.
from a distance, like that first scene where it zooms way out and he runs and grabs her, or you're seeing through the skylight of him attacking the woman in her apartment. I respect that it kind of gives that emotional distance, despite still being very tense and upsetting. I really thought this movie had a very strong point of view about misogyny, as you mentioned, the different iterations of it and layers to it. I thought this movie had a lot of really smart things to say about consent, about the way that men touch women without their permission in ways that make
Yes.
them extremely uncomfortable. There's kind of a running thing in this film about men touching women's hair and touching their heads in ways that make them feel very uncomfortable. And like first, when it's the first woman that we see killed, he goes to touch her, to like grab her neck to choke her, and she kind of like laughs it off a little bit at first, like brushes him away before he goes back in and like really goes for it. And people are touching Anna Kendrick's head and her hair, like Pete Holmes tries to like brush her hair out of her face before he goes to kiss her, and Rodney does that to her later in the movie. So I think there's a really sharp commentary there about that, about touch and consent, and as you mentioned, politeness. When she's clearly, he's not into Pete Holmes, he's her
No.
neighbor, but for her it's easier to just sleep with him and be done with it than to try and like rebuff his advances, and I think that definitely says a lot.
Wait, I didn't
found
think she slept with him.
Yeah, they
She
woke up in bed the
She
next
woke
day.
in bed next to him.
Oh my God, where the fuck was I? Okay, I
Yeah.
apologize. I was
No, it's okay.
I
She
was like, I
she
didn't think
did.
she slept with him.
No, she definitely did, because and
Oh
then
my
you
God,
could
that
tell
makes
that she
things
was
even
like
worse.
so annoyed with herself, but she's like also kind of like what it was just
Yeah,
easier to sleep
no,
with
yeah.
him and be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really sharp, but also the scene that you mentioned after the show where they go out for that drink, it becomes so tense after he's trying all of his usual lines on her and they're just not working, and then he says something that she laughs at and makes fun of, and the film and Anna Kendrick as a director does a really amazing job of changing the whole dynamic of the room. It's almost like everything else falls away. There's like no one else there. It's just the two of them sitting across the table from each other, like no other
Yep.
sound, no other music, and the
Mhm.
tension is so thick in the room and so uncomfortable, and it becomes so scary. You could tell how angry he is and how scary he's becoming. That from there through the scene where he, brings her to the parking lot and basically like chases her to her car, my heart was just pounding through my chest. It was so tense and frightening. So I think the movie did a really good job of creating tension and making me just really unnerved by all of this. I think if I have any critique, it's not necessarily that there's time jumps, but I do think for me it felt disjointed because of the time jumps in a way that it kind of I would start to get into something and then I would kind of get thrown out of it by jumping to the different murders or time periods. So I think that's my only critique of it. But otherwise, I found this to be like a really effective movie and a really great directorial debut.
I just want to jump in for a minute. I'm so glad that you talked about that scene, Evan. And it reminded me of a quote that Gloria Steinem said years ago, where she said, what women fear in men is violence, and what men fear is women like laughing at them. And I thought that, just reminded me of that. And that was a great scene. So yeah, definitely
Good
agree with
quote.
everything you said.
Okay. Well,
Where you at, Dave?
I'm gonna be the one who disagrees again. I didn't dislike this because it's bad. I think it's pretty good. I think Anna Kendrick's direction on a scene for scene basis is really sharp. And I think the scene where she's on the date with Rodney is really, really tense. But I really had a problem with the time jumps. They really, like Evan, I think more though, they really threw me out of things. And I also and I know this is kind of the point, but they were so ugly to me, just so nasty. I was like, I don't want to really fucking see this. So it's not that I think this is a bad movie. I just didn't like it because it made me feel just like, oh.
I mean, that's the point.
I know,
argue.
I know that's the point, but like, I just, it's not. I mean, movies don't need to entertain. Lots of movies don't entertain, and I like them, but I just found this off-putting in that way. Maybe because it's so effective. I don't know. Also, I don't love Pete Holmes the way everybody else does. So seeing him play a douchebag, I was just like, yeah, it makes sense.
He did it well.
Fair. Yeah. Speaking of people being douchebags, I think I've only ever seen Daniel Zavato play a douchebag. He's good at it. Yeah, it's funny because I think of him on Station 11, and he plays kind of this sort of, this ambiguous character where he's kind of a villain, but kind of not, which is intriguing. And that role is actually what Anna Kendrick, seeing him is what made her convinced they had to cast him in that part. Which I thought, because it was funny, because watching the film, I'm like, oh, this is very similar to his character in Station 11, where there's a charm to him, but also a real danger to him, and kind of this unpredictability that you don't know when he's going to turn. And although there's more humanity in the character in Station 11, but so it was very unnerving to see him here. It feels like an escalation of that character.
Yeah. I have to say the character that I felt for the most was Laura, the woman who no one believed about.
It's so heartbreaking.
I know. Yeah. I was just like
devastated for her.
I was just like, when her boyfriend just starts being a dick in the car, I was just like, come on, man. Just why do you fucking got to do that?
Well, thankfully she kicked him out. And
I
broke
did
up
like
with him
that.
then.
She was just like, get out of the car. I was like, okay, here we go. But yeah, this just didn't. I wasn't feeling this one, and it's not, like I said, it's not because it's bad. I just wasn't feeling it. So there you go. My critique will be brief for that reason.
Well, at least you thought it was good, you know.
Yeah, it just there are some movies. It's kind of like. I mean, this is. I don't think this is necessarily a good movie. You know what? I'm not even going to go there. Forget it. I'm not going to compare it. Doesn't matter. So anyway, so we got 2 yeahs on Woman of the Hour. I keep wanting to call it Woman of the Year, Woman of the Woman, which is what I wrote in my notes.
Woman of the Woman.
Yeah, I don't know why I did that. Did you two have any final thoughts on it before we ended?
Yeah, I had one more thought. I think that it really reminded, not so much in its story and not in its tone, but in its theming and the way it does it. It reminded me of The Assistant, Kitty Green's film starring Julie Garner, in just its depiction of misogyny and kind of showing it in different forms. It reminded me of that.
Yeah. Now that really worked for me.
Yes. I mean, that is such a sharp film and so subtle and brilliant in its subtleties. I'm not saying it's like as good as that, although I did like this a lot. But it reminded me, like, kind of would be a good double feature, I guess. Yeah. The other thing, I guess there's one more thing I'll say. I know I said it kind of before, but like, I'm someone who's not, I know a lot of people love true crime. I know they love it, and I get why they love it. And I know there's various reasons why. And for some people, they find catharsis in it. I've always found it kind of a repellent field. But there are some true crime films that I think really work and are very good. And I think this was one. So I like that it's a different perspective on true crime.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think that's one of the selling points for me too, is that it doesn't take the usual approach of kind of reveling in the violence and glorifying the killer, whether intentional or unintentional. I think I respect that it does that. And then the other thing I want to say, I think it was more of like a meta note, because Dave, I believe you said something effective like she got the fuck out of there, or she got the fuck out of California or something. And I was looking at my notes and I just wrote, she got the fuck out of LA. That was my notes.
Yeah. Yeah, she did. She had that experience and then she was like, peace.
She's like, I'm fucking out of here.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Alrighty, gang.
I think I was just gonna say, I think the lesson to take away from this is listen to women.
Yeah.
Believe women, listen to women. When men are creepy.
Well, let's end right there. Men are creepy. I do not.
I said when men are creepy.
Oh, when. I'm just gonna say I do not disagree. So alrighty. That is this episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. We've got a yeah on Smile 2. Very different from Smile, but a yeah from Megan. We've got 2 yays and a nay on MadS.
Yes.
And 2 yays and an on Woman of the Hour. So, yeah, there you go. We want to thank our editor, Otto Clamor. Otto, thank you so much for making us sound great each week.
Thanks, Otto.
Thanks, Otto.
Want to thank our sponsor piece patron, Heather Sachs, for being our sponsor piece patron. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts. We have a website, spoilerpiece.com, on social media. We're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook, and we're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Threads. If you'd like to email us, get us in touch, and let me know why I should give Woman of the Hour better praise, you can do that, spoilerpiece@gmail.com. Or if you'd like to, you can give us a call.
862-21-PEACE.
And you can tell us your thoughts on any of the movies tonight, or you can tell us your thoughts on anything. Do you like hummingbirds? We would like to know.
Oh, I love hummingbirds, so I would definitely like to know
I do too. Yeah.
Who doesn't?
There's got to be some asshole out there. If you like the show, please consider rating and reviewing us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece, or you can rate us directly on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That really helps us boost ye old profile. And if you really, really like the show, please consider joining our Patreon. Like I said at the top, we talked about the movie Immaculate, starring Sydney Sweeney, because it's October, and October is scary. And so is pregnancy body horror movies. Or something.
Yeah.
And we... Yeah. And that's everything. My name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can follow me on every social media as Dave Sees Movies.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, and co-host of the Instant Pictures podcast. You can follow me on social media as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I write for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and a member of Gallica. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at OpinionS World, or on Instagram and Letterboxd at The OpinionS.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.